if you could describe your journey to your current leadership position, and then like what leadership roles shaped your path along that journey.
Okay, and I have a few notes also, so you're going to see me also talk through some of my notes because I'm one that I like to prepare a little bit
Yeah.
in things that I share. Um, First of all, I'm a first generation college student, and meaning that neither one of my parents um, or my grandparents had a higher education. So I'm really the first in my family, um, you know, going back generations that we've not had anyone go to college. And so it was my experience in high school. I was a trio student with the Upward Bound program.
Mm.
So the Upward Bound program, and you probably have heard of that program, is federally funded. And there's many programs now. I think many promise programs across our nation have, and other college going programs have looked to the TRIO programs for a model. And so I participated in that from my 9th through 12th grade, learned a lot about trying to go to college, what I needed to do to prepare, had exposure to all sorts of things that I don't think I probably would have had exposure to until a long period of time, just going to a you know, a college game, going to the theater, set my foot on a HBCU campus, and a primarily white institution, serving institution campus, having those types of experiences. And I chose to go to Ohio Wesleyan University, where I majored in elementary education. And I came to college thinking that I was going to be a hospital administrator. Um, I thought that's what I wanted to pursue. Took a couple of business classes, econ classes, and did well in them. But I was like, I don't know if that's really going to keep me going. So I trucked over to the education department because I'd had some experiences as a teenager working in a library, a public library. And so I became a first grade teacher, taught, and went out to Minnesota and did my master's degree. And really, I approach a lot of my work as a classroom teacher because of that early training, knowing how to put together the objectives, kind of a teaching plan, lesson plan. If I don't necessarily formulate it on paper, it definitely is formed in my head. And, you know, as I approach like presentations or things that I have to give, my first question is, what do I want these people to leave with knowing? And the information that's followed. So I would say that's followed me for a long time because of that training experience. Had the opportunity to return to the TRIO family. My undergrad was looking for a counselor for the Upward Bound program. I came back to the institution there, and that really got my higher education, my foot into higher education. And I stayed there at Ohio Wesleyan University for about 3 years, and then make the transition in 1995 to come to Michigan, where I had the opportunity to be the assistant director of the Upward Bound program at Kellogg Community College. It was a land of fortune in the sense that the director left there within a year, and the president looked to me to say, Marshall, you've been doing a good job. We certainly would love for you to stay with us and want to provide you an opportunity to help move these students through the higher education pipeline. So I did that. That bug has stuck with me for almost 30 plus years, with being in higher education. And I've had all sorts of other opportunities. Specifically, I would say I came through the student services arm because that's where the Upward Bound program was kind of in the system at Kellogg. And so had opportunity to teach as an adjunct for the community college system. And I really enjoyed that piece and had opportunities to be the dean of student at Kellogg, vice president for student services at Kellogg, and learned a lot under a couple of different presidents and vice presidents during my tenure And then I left the state of Michigan in 2009, went out to Pennsylvania, Harrisburg Area Community College, where you navigate some systems sometimes where it's not necessarily you, but it's when you get to a certain level around the politics that are going on at the institution. And it was one of the things that was happening at Kellogg at the time was politics, where the board was in a different place. And so I knew the right decision for me, possibly to progress in my career, was to leave. And so I did that. I went to Harrisburg Area Community College, became a campus vice president, where essentially I was the president of that campus, the Lancaster campus, and was there for about 3 years. I had a tremendous experience working for someone who came to me, or I said, Marshall, and when this was the president there, said, I want to help you. And tell me what your next step is in your career path. And I told him I definitely wanted to have a college that I was the leader, sole leader, and that I had a board. And so also determining what kind of leader you wanted to be, if you wanted to be a community college president, which I did at that time, I had to also say what types of institutions did I want to lead. And so that was one of the pieces that he helped me kind of talk through with other folks who were kind of, I call my supporting cast of folks that have helped me throughout my years. And then I went to, I knew I needed some help with outreach, and not necessarily outreach, but specifically around raising money, because I had tremendous experience around outreach and advocacy, but not directly around raising dollars. And so he put me in a role where I could help the foundation at HAC, and had some significant role there. And then also too, around one of the other skill sets I wanted to do was around strategic planning. And so it helped me to get on that path around helping to guide folks in that, and lead the strategic planning process for the institution. And made the decision that stayed there for about 3 years and applied for a position in West Virginia as the president of New River Community and Technical College. And I was there for 5 years and had a number of successes, a number of different things came up that I had to deal with, including lack of funding, a significant lack of funding, where the state was not providing their share, and having to share that information with folks and indicating to folks that we're going to have to do a pay cut, and things. So it was some significant things that happened there. And then in 2018, had the opportunity to come to Kalamazoo Community College, and this is my 6th year. And of course, had tremendous experiences here and being able to reconnect with folks. And through that course of time, I've also had the opportunity to do other things across the nation regarding community colleges, and being on the board for AACC, American Association for Community Colleges. NCSD, National Council for Student Development, was on their board for community college. President's Roundtable, an affiliate group of African American presidents, an affiliate council of AACC, being able to share my experiences there, and also having the unique opportunity to teach at Ferris in the doctorate in community college leadership program. So I would say those had some significant parts of my journey in my role, my leadership positions.
What kind of specific leadership qualities do you believe that were crucial in your rise? Because I feel like, again, it's different for everyone, right? As far as leadership qualities go. But what I've been hearing is that a lot of times people in your position, other people would say, hey, you really should go do this. You'd be good for it. You'd be good at it. So what qualities have you seen throughout your career that have kind of elevated you to this position? You mentioned in that trios program when you were the director or the assistant director, that they wanted to move you up to the director. Your president had that vision for you. So you've made an impression along each way that you've stopped? What kind of skills do you think helped, create that impression or had people looking at you and saying like, that guy's a leader, that guy's going to move up, that guy's going to go on? Can you speak to that?
Yes. I would say one is around open communication, um, trying to be as transparent as possible regarding what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, but also doing that with others as well who are under your care. Um, trying, doing your best in that piece around open communication. It means listening, 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 and then talking
Mm-hmm.
and sharing.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes I try my best to make sure that I give voice to others so
Mm-hmm.
that I can hear what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't necessarily mean I have an answer for that. um, because sometimes I don't. And sometimes I say, thank you for that question. And then move right on without explaining it. And then I think about it for some time and may come back to someone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in about 1998, I was promoted to Dean of Student Development at Kellogg. And I was responsible for a number of grant programs there, including TRIO programs, but included Perkins, including some state grants. And so one of the other things that I would say that I also have a skill at is deciphering information and then putting it into such a format that everyone possibly can understand.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you know, I still do that
Mm-hmm.
from those times that I worked on grants specifically to be able to decipher information, be able to synthesize that information and make it so that, folks can understand it from, a pure academic person, from also the layman person and students understanding what needs to happen, understanding what's being said to help people understand possibly where we're going.
I'm quite sure
Mhm.
there are, but if you could speak to those.
I would say I think and other folks have told me this as well, that I'm a transformational leader, um, being able to take something and listen for a little while, hear the inputs, and then say, this particular piece needs a little bit of something
Mm-hmm.
and transform it with input. And with that, I'm not necessarily the one that has to be at the head of even moving along, but I can certainly have that influence with others to put them in that kind of leadership place. And I think partly it's also around that servant leadership,
Mm-hmm.
providing people, a seat at the table, a seat on the bus. But I'm also one around actionable steps
Mm-hmm.
and holding people accountable. So I'm not one just to say I'm here to serve others. I'm here to serve others as long as you want to do and you follow through on your part
Mm-hmm.
that's you're responsible for. And then it's around a mindset of gratefulness. I
Mm-hmm.
try my best to, go at every situation around what's the great things that are going on here? Why am I so pleased around the small things that are happening and the large things are happening, and being grateful for others, being grateful that someone has contributed. But also too, I've come down to this too, that can't live by itself in this day after COVID. I have had to call out people more and more around, you pick up a paycheck like everybody else,
Mm-hmm.
and so I need for you to step up to the plate. And I'm grateful for you're here, but you're not providing a free service.
Mm-hmm.
Do the work and holding people accountable.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that last piece I've developed just out of COVID.
Yeah, yeah. I can guess exactly the problem you're having. So on that note, not any institution really it sometimes can feel like it's just a bunch of buildings connected by heating ducts, right? And so getting instructors on the same page, getting staff, getting, everybody kind of I have this idea of shared governance or this idea we're all in it together. So collaboration, teamwork. What kind of strategies or approaches do you use to have that happen? Is there any instance where your leadership kind of contributed to a collaborative achievement across campus that, it was definite leadership strategies and skills that you employed and you saw the result like, okay, this
Yes.
resulted in us coming together with something successful?
I would say one of the things that I think I'm good at is around strategic planning and trying to
Mm,
make strategic planning simple.
mm,
So within the governance structure at our institution, when I arrived, I took what was the board's goals, um, and went and talked to the board. I said, your goals are my goals. And we did a little bit of strategic planning probably that first year that helped us get to working through the first for about 3.5 years that I was here. So last year, last year we started working on the current strategic plan, which is for 3 years. And we took a real approach. Well, I'm going to back up to that first part. I did these meetings called Together is Better meetings
mm,
and I invited everyone from the college to provide me input regarding just a couple of questions. It was around 3 or 4 questions. Just, what do you like about the college? What don't you like about the college? What would you change? I did that within the first probably 180 days that I was here. And that helped to inform my decision regarding that first strategic plan and putting some things together. And we still did some work as cabinet to put some meat around it.
mm,
Well, kind of the second part that I got to do was really develop a strategic plan from the grassroots all the way up, and had these intentional groups that people again got to sign up for, and really had our president's cabinet and then our administrative plus group that also included representation from the faculty to help format for me what was the vision we wanted to see, what were the and I won't say three, but they came out to be three goals. There may be 4 goals for the institution, but under those goals, it had some other objectives. And then we had informative groups from students, faculty, staff across the whole institution that got to have input to that. We took that back to the board of trustees. We integrated their board goals into that document. At the same time that was going on, we had another team of individuals working on the mission statement that include input from across the whole institution. Our mission statement used to be 3 pages. Now it's just one sentence. And I'm exaggerating. It was
Sure.
a full page, around 4 paragraphs, I would tell you when I first came. And I said, this can't be our mission.
Mission impossible.
Right. I said, we got to have something that people can look to and be inspired by, and all the positions, from folks who are front desk folks, our maintenance folks, our faculty members that teach, from our tutors, our paraprofessionals, from community ed folks, from people who are at our museum, people who run our food innovation center. I said, they all have to look to the mission as well. And knowing that everyone's mission is not around just the credits bearing student, it's around so many other things that we've had to really help folks understand in that matter. So getting back to kind of the strategies, one of the other things is one-on-one meetings, group meetings, collaborative meetings that I encourage, retreats I encourage. One of the things that we did not do before I got here that I think has been transformational is that I closed the college for twice a year outside of holidays for professional development, for us to have a half day, not only with me sharing and getting up and sharing. Now, I would tell you, I try my best. I know people don't want to hear about budget. People don't want to hear what's going on in the state and politics. So I limit my remarks to about 8 minutes. And then the rest of the time, I bring in a keynote speaker that's going to be inspirational again, but you're only going to, you got to inspire us within 30 minutes. And then the rest of the time is around professional development, around what's going on at the institution that people need to be informed about, that peers are leading those breakout sessions. So because before I got here, there was only professional development really only happening in that type of structured manner for our faculty. So many other folks did not have that type of an experience.
I'm taking a step away from my questions because some of what you've said has sparked new thought process in my head. What's the value of having that support group that you talked about, or mentors, or, it seems like there's a lot of value there. For you in your career, how much was that a help? Like, how detrimental was it, do you think?
I think it is very pivotal. You know, I have what I call a file that's called a Blue Monday file that when I was a counselor at Ohio Wesleyan University, my supervisor at that time told me, Marshall, don't look to someone to give you any kind of gratitude. She said, because it may not happen. She said, get yourself a file. I've always had a file where I could put a note. And at that time, email was not really prevalent, but she said, I get memos and things like that. And she said, I put it in that file because there are days that this is lonely work and you have to encourage yourself. And so that's one of the things I do. But I think also, too, with the network of folks across the nation, I have some really key relationships with some people that I can call to say, hey, I got this particular issue that's going on. Can you help? And likewise, people call me around the same thing. They need help with this. So I think it goes both ways. And I think it's one around nurturing those relationships over time. Because this, as a leader, this can be a very lonely place some days, because you don't necessarily have folks that you can strike up those ideas or those comments with right here on your own campus, because you don't want to put people in that kind of predicament where, you're thinking through. I'm a scenario planner, so I'm thinking through all what can happen, what can do, and there's probably one or two people that I now have built a relationship with as I've built my team that I can say, come on in here, let's talk through this. And they get it and they can keep it confidential without knowing that the world is not going to end just because sometimes I have to think the worst.
Yes.
And then pedal back to what is going to be the best.
Anyone in upper admin has to have this ability to have people they trust in their corner. You trust that when you say, hey, we're going to do this, I need you to handle this part. You trust they're going to make that happen, right? Or like you said, if there's confidential information or something, I'm the same way. I know exactly what you're talking about. I love to talk out, right? And I love by committee because, I could sit there and rack my own brain, but if I've got other people, we can find a consensus. But I'd imagine the things you're dealing with could be a lot more confidential, right, than what I am. So as we talk about that trust and transparency, how do you build that within your group, that you have? How do you build that? And I'm sure it goes in levels, probably quite a bit. One of the things when I talk with Dr. Pink is that he puts certain people, he hires people because he knows he's maybe worked with them in the past, or there are people that he can trust just based on their body of work. And then he's okay with letting them handle sometimes some of these bigger issues because he knows they can do it, and so there's that ownership also that comes into play. So how do you build and maintain trust among your team members?
I think it's important to allow people to come and share sometimes their own life experiences that help me kind of say, okay, this person is going to be good. If you can be honest to me around whatever's happened in your life, the good and the bad and the ugly, and sometimes those little pockets where you maybe not let anyone else in before, I'm going to trust you. And I've also seen an evidence of your work sometimes played out in other places that you've been.
Okay.
So it also is around, you come with this information that sometimes it's, again, having built this network of community college leaders across the United States, this is a small place.
Mm.
And if I don't know you directly, I at least know you probably indirectly by 2 or 3 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
And calling on folks to help share. Okay, what happened there?
Mm-hmm.
And even people who've made mistakes around, what was that mistake about? Was it really their mistake, or was it something from external that impacted them?
Mm-hmm.
Did they really do this project all by themselves? And it was such success? Wonderful. I think also too around that has helped me balance what sometimes I may think I know instinctively is my work with fairs, and getting me back into when I started that work probably almost 7 or 8 years ago, getting into the literature again, having not always been in it, even though I feel like I just finished my doctorate, even though I think it was in 2010 or so, 2009 or so is when I finished. But it made me really think through, okay, Marsha, you have these journals coming in, you have these things that are coming in. Look to see what people are doing and how they line up with what we want to work on as a strategy. And that leads itself also to good people and putting that stuff in their hands. So they're not just going based upon what they think, but they're doing it based upon, okay, these are some really sound out practices that say you can make this happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say those are some of the things. I have also taken risk and chances. That's the other piece that has happened for me is, and I'll tell you an example of this. Our student services area needed a leader to come in and help shake it up and hold people accountable for their work every day. And at the time, I did not have the timeline to really do a full-blown search. And so as the president, I had to take a calculated risk. I hired someone who was in our community. I did not know them personally, but I had heard of her work. And I had some inroads news that we had a new superintendent of schools. This person had worked in the central office for close to 20 years. And I decided to reach out to her and to say, do you want a new position? I've heard about you from a number of people that your candor is good. You have a great temperament. She has a wonderful emotional intelligence. She knows herself. But she was willing to hold people accountable and did things very similar to what we do. Title IX, disabilities and accommodations were under her preview, and I think school lunch program and things like that. So there was some relationship back to the community college system, and so I took that calculated risk, and it's been working out. Now, there are some people who push me on, why are you bringing a K-12 person in here to do this work? And I said, one, because she's a great leader. And the community respects her. And we're a community college, and we work with community folks every single day. And so it's been working out.
How do you, in the community college, how do you handle conflict or disagreement within your team when something comes up? Do you have a scenario maybe where that happened sometime, where there was a positive outcome that came out of that?
Disagreement does happen. And one of the things that I talked to, especially the president's cabinet members about, is that my expectation is that you can you don't be disagreeable.
Okay.
But you can certainly disagree. And if I have to step into a situation like King Solomon and you're asking me to split the baby, both sides are going to lose.
A situation like that, as a president, it's a tough kind of tenuous. You got to be careful with what you say because clearly information that not everyone knows. You've got the whole picture for the most part, right? All the time. You hope you do. And you're pushing and pulling, like you say, with people that are sometimes probably trying to do things that benefit them, in a way. And so, do you have any advice for potential leaders down the road that might have to, compromise in certain situations, or maybe they have this idea or plan or strategic goals that they want to push forward, but they just have to understand it's not going to happen as soon as they think it is, because there is that dance that you have to do a little bit to kind of,
Yep.
yeah.
And I say I mean, Matt, you're already speaking of it. It's a dance. It's you know, live to fight another day. There are some times where there's some things is that a pivotal issue that you're going to lay down your sword or you're going to die on your sword to say, I can get back to this. I don't want to be disgruntled at the end of my career. I want to have the relationships because relationships mean a lot to me. And so in leading others and serving others, I want to be able to say, okay, maybe this just didn't work for right now. I'm a cook too, okay? And I like to cook. There are certain dishes that just don't turn out. You know,
Right.
sometimes I've been left it in the oven too long and it's been browned too much, or I put a little bit of extra something in it that I thought I should put in it, or I asked one of the children to look after the dish who weren't, but if I asked my wife to look after the dish, it may come out better. So it's just like in the world of life, if you're cooking this thing up and you're trying to make it work, you just may have to go back to the drawing board and say, I can do this again, and it can happen this way. Or we just didn't have the funding to do it, to make it work. So yeah, it is a tough thing to have to do that dance. But there are certain times too, you may decide, okay, I'm just gonna say it and then let it out.
Yeah.
And let the chips fall where they are and see where we're going to go. But I don't want to always be that disruptive leader.
So what advice would you give to emerging leaders who aspire to reach a leadership position within a college or educational institution?
Well, I think partly I don't know what I don't know around what people are going to have to deal with, but there's so much out there. This past year we had to deal with an IT incident. Our students are expecting in this day and age, you got multiple generations that you serve, and then you have multiple generations that are in our workplace, from World War II folks that are still hanging on to a job, baby boomers, Generation Xers, millennials, what's that other generation and I forget the name of them, Generation Y or something, that are right here on the crux of that we're serving as well. And then you have the same thing in converse that are on your teams. So it's around kind of balancing those needs, and they all have different needs. And then you also have students who are looking for instantaneous respect. We all are. We've been spoiled by Amazon. For those who can access Grubhub, you've been spoiled. Now, I won't ever spend the money for Grubhub, but there are some people who will, for the reliance. So you don't know what you don't know as a leader. And you got to listen. You got to really listen. You got to ask follow-up questions so you can truly pinpoint, did you hear what you hear? And make an informed decision based upon what someone told you. And then moving forward, commit yourself to student success. As a leader, if it's in higher education, and that's the work that we do in any sector of higher education, that should be the focus. To help our students be successful. That's my focus. So I would say that's the advice that I want to give folks is listen, 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 and again, listen. Don't think you have to be the loudest voice in the room, because at the end of the day, you get to make the decision.